I've been giving myself permission to do less with my financial approach, and I'm also giving you guys the permission too. If you're someone who constantly feels like they're behind or constantly chasing the next big thing, it's important to really stop and slow down. Whether it's a new investment opportunity you just heard of, or whether you really want to get into the investment property game, or you just want to put your money in a place that's going to grow so quickly, okay? It's all about a hustle culture lately, and I want to turn that on its head and talk about the slow approach for your finances. Number one, the pressure to hustle. We live in a world where people who have this hustle culture mentality are put on a pedestal, and we often feel like we're not doing enough to ever get to the stages that they're at. And it often feels like if you're not grinding every second of the day, that you're actually falling behind or you're not good enough. Take investing, for example. A lot of people throw their money into cryptocurrency or single stocks like Tesla in the hopes that they will gain a massive return super quickly. Or maybe it's investment property where they feel like it's so passive. They just buy an extra property, rent it out, they pay for the mortgage, and then you scrape off the profit off the top. So easy, right? But what I started to realize is that this hustle culture, it actually makes you more stressed rather than productive. You're not actually enjoying the process. You're just trying to get to a place as fast as you can without really understanding why or how. Number two, my financial realization. So here's the twist. Instead of hustle culture, I decided to do less. So I decided to simplify my investment portfolio, right? And here's what happened. My financial journey became a lot more manageable. I was able to have a lot more time for myself, and my wealth was still able to grow in the background by itself. I haven't been investing for decades, okay? Don't get me wrong. I'm 34 now, and I only learned investing when I was age 30. So when the pandemic was happening, I just went down this rabbit hole of videos by Warren Buffett with long-term strategies. So people like John Bogle, like the founder of Vanguard, he really taught me a lot with these free videos on YouTube, right? Of what the power of compound interest can do for all of us. So I had always wanted to have an investment property. To me in my life, that was like, man, I've made it if I've got an investment property and I've got tenants and I'm a landlord. But when I started to look into that, I was like, oh my God, this is so not passive. You know, if something breaks or, you know, if there's a maintenance issue, I'm the fucking weirdo that has to sort it out. And even if you have a management company to look after it, you have to pay them a pretty hefty percentage for them to do stuff. And then I know from experience from other people who've had investment properties that even with management companies, they always call you as well to be like, there's a plumbing issue, we have to sort a plumber. They will still ring you and tell you about it and you have to sort it out, okay? So it's not like it's a passive form of investing, putting your money into property. So when I realized that, I put all of my spare money into something like an index fund, like an S&P 500. And what that is it tracks the top 500 companies in North America over time, okay? So if the top 500 companies do well in America, the index fund also does well over that time. And if you're new to investing, I also did a video on how to invest from absolute scratch in less than 10 minutes, so you can set up your account today. But the great thing with investing in index funds, right, is that it's a long-term game. So all you need to do is put your money into one of these wrappers. So in the UK, it's called an ISA, and in America, these are the names that you would use for that wrapper, okay? And then you can then choose if you want to invest in an S&P 500, which is America, or something like the FTSE, which is the UK version of that. And then you just sit and wait, okay? It's a long-term approach. So if you do something called dollar cost averaging or pound cost averaging, if you're in the UK, right? And all that means is you put the same amount of money every month into this index fund. So for me, when I was starting out, it was only £100 I was putting into it, but I was consistent. So if the index fund was doing really well, okay, I would maybe buy fewer index funds for that £100. But if it was doing really poorly and it was dipping down, which happens over time, I would be buying more, stock for that £100, okay? So if you always pay the same amount and it's automated, so you don't even have to think about it, you're just constantly putting money into there and it will grow over time with compound interest. Let's do an example for people who aren't sure what I'm talking about. So let's say you're age 20, okay, and you can afford to put £200 into something like an S&P 500. If you do that for the next 20 years until you're 40, this is how much money you have, okay? However, instead of investing, you just put that £200 into your local bank savings account, which only gives you 1% interest rate. Side note, always check your interest rate on your savings accounts because sometimes they can be less than 1%. If you're not sure, just go onto your banking app and it will tell you straight away. So if the same person just did this instead and for 20 years they continued to put that into a 1% savings account, this is how much money they would have, okay? So the difference is vast. And if you leave it in for a long amount of time and it's just automated, you don't have to think about it, okay? It's not like an investment property where you're going to get bothered every other month or your tenant's not going to pay its rent, so you're down, or there's a massive leak and it's ruined all of the floors and you have to replace the floors. Man, that is so not passive, where I feel an index fund is true passive wealth growing. And honestly, when I made this switch in my mind and actually physically started investing, it was such a weight off. I don't ever even think about it. I rarely even look at my Vanguard account. I personally have Vanguard. There are cheaper versions out there, which, if you're a new investor, you can pay less fees, of course. But if you are investing, it's important not to get emotions involved with it, right? So don't look at your Vanguard account or your index fund regularly. I try and only look at mine once a quarter. But something that John Bogle said is actually never to look at it at all. And then when you're retired, you'll get such a shock with how much money has compounded over time. But I think once a year or once a quarter is grand, but definitely not once a day, definitely not once a week, not even once a month, okay? You don't want to get trapped in the emotions of it all, because they will always rise and fall. That's just how the economy works, right? If there's a recession, if there's a pandemic, you can see there's mad drops in the S&P 500, right? But of course, if you leave it in for big chunks of time, you will ride the wave of all of those things. So don't fall into the emotions of it, just let it be automated in the background. The next tip is simple financial goals. One of the most liberating things is not to have to juggle too many goals in my mind, right? I just try and focus on, okay, how much money do I want to have in the future? How much money do I need to live off in the future per month? And also, what kind of life do I want to live for myself? Do I want to live by the beach? Do I want to live in New York City? Do I still want to live in London? Sometimes you don't even know which way your life is going to go, so it's kind of hard to plan ahead. But if you have an idea of the lifestyle that you do want to live, do you want to retire by 45? Do you want to have kiddos in the future? If you understand where you are right now and then to plan ahead for that kind of goal. It may change and that's grand, but money is a great thing to be used as a tool. So if you're constantly building up wealth for yourself there, you can of course change direction and move to New York if you want to. For myself, I have a high yield savings account with an emergency fund which has easy access to it. So in my emergency fund at the minute, I have 6 months worth of living expenses. Of course, it depends on the life that you live. If you have your own business, which I don't right now, I still work a 9 to 5 and then do this YouTube thing on the side, right? But if I own my own business, they recommend up to 12 months of emergency fund to have for yourself, which is a lot of money, right? But if you're just starting out, don't freak out, okay? If you have a regular 9 to 5, I recommend 3 to 6 months worth of living expenses, and you can of course build this up over time, but it's really important to have it. If your car breaks down, if your kiddo is sick and you can't go to work and you can't get paid the normal rate, okay, it's important to have that buffer of money there. So in terms of my retirement, I of course have a pension, and whatever company I was with, I always tried to put in the most that I could afford. So for example, if your company offers 3%, 4%, 5% and 6% to put towards your pension, I would always try and go with the 6%, which is the highest amount. And also check if your employer does, matching as well, matches your contribution. So for example, in my last company, if I contributed 6% into my pension, which is my retirement pot here in the UK, okay, they would actually match it with 12% on top of that. So I had 18% of a feckin' pension going in, which was unbelievably amazing. Now, not all companies do that. That was quite rare. But if your company is offering something like this, that's free money. So look into what your company's doing now and make sure that you're actually contributing the most that you can. It's really important to understand where your money is going and what is best for you. So doing less means more. So here's the surprising part. If you're always trying to spread yourself thin with hustle culture here, doing like 5 different side hustles on the side to get extra income, okay, but then at the end of the day, you're absolutely wrecked. You've no time for your partner, you've no time for your kids, you're missing out on important things. You really just have to readjust as to what kind of life do you want to have for yourself. So for example, I was so invested into the FIRE community when I first got into finance videos, okay? I would watch so many ways and people were saving like 70% of their income by living with family or scrimping down on meals or just not doing fun stuff. And at first I was like, oh my God, these people are amazing. And I would love to retire by the age of 35 by doing the stuff that they do, right? But then once I started to try and do these things, I was like, man, I don't want to scrimp on my food. You know, I like eating healthy. I like having a feckin' avocado on toast from here, okay? It's a different story if you're spending £12 on avocado toast out in London and it's expensive, right? But an avocado from the supermarket is £1 and some toast is like, what, 50p or something? If it's gluten-free, it's expensive, right? So you can, of course, still make it from home for a fraction of the cost and still be healthy. So this is, of course, a personal one. For you, it might be like, yeah, I want to scrimp and save as much as I can so that I don't have to work the job that I feckin' hate. Let me know down below, do you follow the FIRE community? Are you part of it? If you are, how is it going? And do you regret joining it, or do you actually thrive in that environment? For me, it was really important as a value of my life to look after my health. So that meant eating healthy, that meant going on walks, doing some exercise, doing yoga. I'm not the fittest person in the world, but I do try and at least get out once a day for a walk, okay? I've learned that the slow and steady approach is so much better for me personally, okay? And to share any tips that I have so that people can save money but also live well for less and be a bit more intentional with their time. And it's not all about money, okay? It's about understanding how you want to live as a person and not just comparing yourself to the next person who's beside you, but to understand who your authentic self is and to live for you. So really need to pause. If you're spending all of your time and energy into hustling left, right and center, and you're not spending any time with yourself, understanding your, needs and your emotions. So understand where you want to be in your life and then just go towards that, because there are ways in which you can grow wealth without having to absolutely kill yourself here. I'll pop this video here because I think it will help you on your wealth journey also. Thanks guys, this video was a little bit different to my usual spiel, so hopefully it was helpful. I read all your comments, so thanks a million for all the nice support and lovely words everyone's been giving me. It's really nice. But until then, I shall talk to you soon. Bye guys.